Before getting started, this video is available ad-free in an audio podcast form on locals.com. If you like what I do, that's probably the best way to support most reliably and effectively. Also, my entire content library is available on Odyssey, which is a alternative to YouTube for anyone who wants to check out another platform, and also support further for free. Links are down below in the description. Okay, so today I want to revisit a topic I've covered once before in the past and discuss a secondary gaming-specific pandemic called scalping. In the previous video, I talked about how tech scalping has become worse and worse over time. Not only did it plague the RTX 3080 release, which was an unmitigated disaster, by the way, it also extended to video game consoles like the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, and it's extremely prominent right now. Today, I want to do a follow-up and not only showcase how this problem has indeed gotten worse over time, exactly as I described in the original video, but also I want to dive deep into the reason why this is a problem to begin with. At least, why is this a problem now, more so than any other point previously in history? The premise of scalping is simple. Buy as much as you can, rely on scarcity of supply, and resell your stock at a markup or a premium. This is an industry as old as commerce itself, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. But Microsoft, Nvidia, Sony, and many others are not only allowing it, they failed to prepare at all for what was ultimately a definitive catastrophe in the making. They knew about this. Everything circles back to COVID to really get started, obviously, but not exactly in the way you may think. The COVID pandemic has fundamentally changed the landscape of consumer retail. For starters, people are now ordering online more than ever before, an activity that was already on the rise previously, but was pushed into a meteoric pattern by the lockdowns and other restrictions. On top of this, at least locally in the United States, which is what I'm speaking to right now, for the bulk of 2020, unemployment benefits were boosted by an insane margin. At one point, the boost was $600 a week, I believe, which equates to more than the base amount and combined, likely more than an average job itself. This bonus was sequentially dropped and will expire at the end of the year, I believe, but in tandem, U.S. citizens were given a stimulus payment of $1,200. This $1,200 stimulus was mailed to over 1 million deceased citizens, as far as I know. It was given to non-American citizens, even actual foreign nationals overseas. And the point is to illustrate that these two efforts in tandem, though short-term and negligible when considering the looming financial recession caused by a collapse in small business operations because of the pandemic, these two efforts in tandem created a temporary swell in retail spending capability for average Americans. That temporary swell in funds had a whole host of applications and effects, but the most important for today is their use in the supplemental entertainment market. Basically, people are bored. Less travel, less events, less parties, less recreational activity, period. And to offset this boredom and stress, because that's a big factor too, many people have turned to video games. The video game industry has seen progressively rising all-time highs, highest player counts, highest revenue quarterly and yearly, and this extends to most notable publishers and developers in the entire space. Simultaneously, we have landed on the doorstep of a new console generation, right before the retail holidays, while the tail end of excess income is still in effect. I hope we can start to see the perfect storm brewing, but all that said, it's maybe like a Category 4 at this point. Let's make it a Category 6. Both Sony and Microsoft heavily utilize a series of 3 electronics manufacturing companies named Foxconn, Flex, and Seagate. By far, the largest in play here is Foxconn, and it just so happens that Foxconn is the central production line for the PlayStation 5. It is a Taiwanese multinational corporation, but its largest locations are in mainland China. For instance, a complex with quite literally hundreds of thousands of workers, sometimes called Foxconn City, is located in Shenzhen, China, as well as, and here's the interesting part, active expansion initiatives from the past few years aimed at Wuhan, China, in the Hubei province. Wuhan, China is ground zero for the coronavirus, and it was locked down tighter than practically any other city on Earth for longer, directly during the time frame when some of these expansion initiatives should have been coming online. Not only that, but China as a whole exerted tremendously powerful lockdown procedures in other cities as well across the nation, and the resulting effects on Foxconn were examined within the context of the iPhone, but not much else. Foxconn also reported a 90%, yes, 90% drop in revenue as a function of the COVID-19 shutdowns, and that is not a simplistic explanation of just a few factories. That is a systemic problem that brought the company to its knees during the prime manufacturing period of the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. There's more, though. Recalling that the COVID-19 pandemic created an all-time high in video game interest, engagement, and spending, we have to also realize that Sony was aware of these looming problems and actually cut production of their PlayStation 5 console by 4 million units over a 6-month period. Now, obviously, the production situation is out of their hands for the most part, but guess what? Things get even worse. In the interest of being precisely thorough, Sony denied the claims that they cut production in any capacity, and updates by the various different publications reporting on this topic were issued soon after, but I find it incredibly hard to believe that production was not cut in the face of the problems we have just outlined, and the further issues we are about to get to. As the virus raged across America and many European countries, mainstream media praised China for their skilled handling of the outbreak. The idea was obvious: condemn all efforts by the current administration and praise the valiant efforts of the CCP. However, those of us with any semblance of cognitive ability were very clearly in the know that the numbers coming from the Chinese government were blatant propaganda. At one point, the CCP was proclaiming that for multi-day stretches, they had literally zero domestic transmission cases while the virus raged through many other countries, and simultaneously they were enacting draconian lockdown policy across multiple provincial regions. This isn't possible. I won't devolve into an analysis or a deeper analysis of the dueling philosophies that result in the CCP downplaying every single metric possible and the United States media upplaying every single metric possible, such as a direct correlation between favorable partisan voting patterns and general COVID panic, or the verified link between high levels of hospital funding and all marked COVID cases. But the point is, even in the face of what we all knew for a fact, just we didn't have the actual evidence, but we were pretty sure, I think most people were, and the media refused to acknowledge for so long, over 100 pages of internal documents from the Chinese government have leaked, which verified that the outbreak was far worse domestically than they projected outwardly. And this only serves to compound the problems that we have already seen with electronics manufacturing. But that's just Sony relying on Foxconn, governed by the CCP, who lied about the actual status of their nation and shut down production during the console's critical manufacturing window, as Sony cut the top-line number of consoles to be produced by 4 million, at least that was their projection, in the face of the largest video game market in history and a glut in retail spending. The hurricane is now Category 6. But we haven't even gotten to Microsoft yet. Microsoft uses a few separate companies, including Foxconn, but also Flex and Seagate. Flex is heavily located in China as well, subjecting it to the same issues. And Seagate, the providers of the SSD component, have been scaling up their reliance on Chinese factories, despite a closure in 2014 and also, I believe, 2017, with rapid expansion in that region. In fact, they only have count them, two final assembly plants in the entire world, one of which is located in Wuxi, China. As early as January, it was projected that Seagate would be one of the companies to struggle most during the pandemic, as its factory locations were shuttered, delaying production of critical components for the Xbox Series X. Essentially, Category 6 hurricane of scarcity for Sony and PlayStation. As demand reaches all-time highs, production gets halted in its tracks, and guidance gets systematically downgraded. Sadly, with that perfect storm of issues, the scalpers come home to roost, and they have. More than I have ever seen before, at least in this particular market. The problem is a wave-based launch system. Next-generation consoles are launching in batches as production finishes, and retailers are overselling. Amazon, Target, I think GameStop, and even Best Buy as well have oversold the inventory they expect to get and caused cancellations or delays across the world. Some people have been forced to spend hours on end just spamming refresh in store pages to try and get a console, and that means the supply is short, the demand is high, and scalpers can make a killing. One individual group in the UK with seemingly less than a dozen members at launch has already resold over 3,500 PS5s and also claims to have acquired over 1,000 Xboxes on top of that. And keep in mind, this is one singular group in one country. This may seem absurd, and it is. The way they do it is automated bot programs that scour the store pages and fill out orders instantaneously as opposed to the limited speed of a human hand. This activity allows them to scoop up dozens of consoles for a single person with alternate payment methods, and in a wave-based launch system, they can do it over and over and over again. Sony and Microsoft, as well as the individual retailers, most of all, have facilitated this and refused to implement a limit 1 or 2 per customer, which only exacerbates the problem further, and all of this on top of the highest demand in history, with a production line cut by millions of units. So what does it all mean? It means this generation of consoles has had one of the worst launches I have ever seen, and it means the likelihood of average users gaining reliable access to these systems is incredibly low until early, even mid-2021. Those access capabilities increase dramatically if you want to pay double the cost for the console that has already been seeing a price hike because of global pandemic issues. But the bottom line is that this perfect storm is not on its way out just yet, with an added bonus that the worst of it is going to come in the lead up to a booming online retail Christmas season. Scalpers should be ashamed of themselves. Don't ban me on YouTube, because they are deliberately exploiting a series of supply chain failures right in the face of a population that actually currently might be able to get the console right now without their greedy price gouging. Another argument to be made is that in certain states, under a government-instituted state of emergency order, price gouging laws extend to all online retail, so it's entirely possible these scalpers are violating the law on this grand a scale and could face real punishment, but it seems unlikely anything would ever actually come of it. Point is, I hate scalpers as much as anyone else, but I've also seen many people speculating on why they are so rampant this time around and so horrible this time through. This is why. A complicated disruption to the supply chain and the consolidated manufacturing trio of companies who support it, combined with a temporarily stimulated economy for a series of reasons, and shifting recreational habits on top, creating all-time highs in the industry. A perfect storm of shit that has made the launch cycle for next-generation consoles this year an absolute nightmare. But that's it. If you want to support my work, please consider Locals for $5 a month, also Odyssey for free, as well as another gaming YouTuber to check out down below if you want to find new channels to watch and enjoy. But that's it. I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.